We're back for episode 2.7. Our episode begins with Theon realizing that something is wrong. Here in the show, the clue is that Osha is not in his bed. But in the book, Theon doesn't bang Osha, he bangs Kira the tavern wench. It's the absence of wolves howling that alarms him. Now here in the show, Theon is absolutely furious that the boys have escaped, and the Ironborn begin to fall apart and act insubordinate. Now, as I said before, in the book, the Ironborn have a lot more self-control and are much more loyal to Theon. And Theon is actually pretty confident that he's going to catch Bran at this point. He has hounds and horses while Bran is on foot. This is significant as in the book, Ramsay enters the picture. Theon is low on men and finds Ramsay in the prison posing as Reek No. 2. Reek No. 2 swears fealty to Theon and goes along on the hunt. And Reek brings with him a large mystery bag. We'll get back to this mystery bag. Now next we're treated to this extra scene of Bran heading away from Winterfell. In the book, the Bran story goes completely silent once he escapes. And let's remember that Jojen and Mira are with Bran. Now meanwhile, north of the Wall, Jon and Ygritte are having all sorts of sexual tension and Sam and Diane moments. Now absolutely none of this happens in the book. Jon never gets separated from Qhorin Halfhand. And we're left wondering, what the hell is Qhorin doing and how is there any logic in his actions? So Qhorin doesn't torture Ygritte despite having a master torturer with him. And then the crew journeys on until Jon has a wolf dream. Ghost has journeyed ahead and finds a young werewood with Bran's face on it. He even talks to this Bran werewood. Fans are pretty perplexed by what this werewood was. Was it Bran? Was it the three-eyed crow posing as Bran? Was it a future time-traveling Bran? We don't really know the answer. Ghost is then attacked by an eagle, awakening Jon, and Qhorin is very interested in the dream before insisting that they press on. Now next we have the Aria Plot, which has deviated quite a bit from the book. Tywin is executing people in search of Amory Lorch's murderer. Of course, in the book, Amory Lorch was killed by the Brave Companions when they switched sides and turned on Tywin. Here we hear about the Mountain's troubles with the Brotherhood without banners, and indeed, in both the show and the book, they were a thorn in the side of anyone who was trying to hurt the common person. Now next we get more grampy Tywin moments with Arya and Tywin. In the book, Tywin never shows any warmth towards anyone. So in our next scene, Sansa runs into the Hound and wants to thank him for saving her in the riot at King's Landing. Now in the book at this point, Sansa is already in communication with Ser Dantos about her escape. And she keeps running into the Hound after her meetings with Ser Dantos. The Hound even covers for her at one point. It seems the Hound knows that Sansa is meeting with Dantos. Now why the Hound, and Littlefinger, and Sweet Robin become infatuated with Sansa is a bit of a mystery. I should point out that for 3 years George R. R. Martin worked on a show called Beauty and the Beast. In that show, Beauty and the Beast have a telepathic connection with each other. The Beast can detect when Beauty is in danger and feels obligated to protect her. Now, I'm not saying that this is the same plot exactly, but all the other Stark children have proven to be telepaths. I think it's highly likely that Sansa has the ability to telepathically influence people around her, and this may explain why the Hound acts so weird around Sansa. Meanwhile, across the Narrow Sea, the Dany plot continues to be different from the book, and she's very angry that her dragons have been stolen. Zara wants to help, but he gets the cold shoulder. Meanwhile, north of the Wall, sexual tension is still brewing. Now in the book, Qhorin pushes the group forward until they find Ghost, and then wants to turn around and head back. His reasoning is that the eagle has spotted them, and now they have to run. Of course, that doesn't make too much sense. The eagle spotted them long before they made it to Ghost. For some reason, Qhorin thought it absolutely necessary to save the wolf's life. Now next we are treated to this extra scene where Robb once again meets the Cleos Frey stand-in. In the book, Robb is away from Riverrun when Ser Cleos arrives, and Ser Cleos has brought with him Tyrion's plan to break out Jaime. 4 men are hidden within Ser Cleos' escort: a thief, a poisoner, a mummer, and a murderer. Now next we are treated to a moment from Roose Bolton. Now again, in the book, Roose isn't there, and there is no Robb romance. Now meanwhile near Winterfell, Theon is frustrated that he can't find Bran, and so Dagmar seems to have a plan. Now in the book, this plan is Ramsay's, which is why Ramsay's mystery bag is so intriguing. It contains a skinning knife, some of Bran's clothing, and a wolf brooch. Now keep in mind, before leaving Winterfell, everyone was pretty certain they were going to catch Bran, so it's astoundingly weird that Ramsay knew they wouldn't and had a contingency plan. It makes me wonder where Ramsay is getting this inside information. A dream? Meanwhile, across the Narrow Sea, we're still off book and everyone is still upset about the dragons being stolen. And north of the Wall, we still have sexual tension. Now in the book, Qhorin starts getting super illogical. Qhorin had previously ordered no fires because he didn't want to be spotted, but all of a sudden he's building fires. And he orders each of his other men away for various reasons. He orders his master Archer to hold a pass, who doesn't seem to slow the wildlings at all. He orders his master torturer to ride hard for the watch, and the torturer asks why Jon isn't being sent since Jon is just as good a rider. And finally, he orders his master climber to just walk off because they don't have enough horses. In the end, Jon thinks they're going to ride hard and make a break for the rest of the night's watch. But then Qhorin just decides that they're going to stop and make a stand against the wildlings. And so Jon is captured by the wildlings, which seems to be what Qhorin wanted the whole time. Qhorin seems to have sabotaged his own ranging expedition, while putting in no effort to fulfill his declared mission, finding out what magical item Mance had. Now meanwhile in King's Landing, Sansa has had her first period. Now this may sound weird, but our author has quite a few references to bloody vaginas and bloody beds. Dany has dragon dreams that involve vaginal bleeding, and then much later when wandering the Dothraki Sea, Dany perhaps miscarries and has vaginal bleeding. The language from the dream and the potential miscarriage match. Beds of blood are also a reoccurring theme. Lyanna dies in a bed of blood, as does King Robert. Now in the book, Sansa's menstruation scene turns out a bit different. There's no Shay and there's no Hound. Sansa dreams about the riot at King's Landing, has her period, and then tries to shove her bed into the fireplace and start it on fire. That's right, fire and blood, the Targaryen words. Now next, Cersei talks to Sansa about her menstruation. Now one major difference between the book and the show here is that in the book, Cersei mentions that she fully expects Stannis to win. This is hugely relevant regarding Cersei's actions and attitude during the Battle of the Blackwater. She really thought they were all going to die. Now next we have a very controversial scene involving Jaime. Here in the show, the Cleos Frey stand-in is put in the same cell as Jaime, and Jaime kills the Cleos Frey stand-in in order to give himself a chance to escape. He essentially uses the body as a diversion. Now in the book, Cleos Frey actually accompanies Jaime and Brienne on their trip back to King's Landing. He's killed by some raiders in the woods, and Jaime doesn't care too much. But that's very different from killing a member of your family for a poorly executed escape attempt. This is pretty darn evil. Now one could argue that yes, pushing Bran from a window is evil, but in that case he was protecting Cersei and his family. This is a completely selfish act. Now next we're treated to this extra scene where Jorah visits Quaithe, and Quaithe quite uselessly tells Jorah that Xaro and Pyat Pree stole the dragons. This is pretty useless because at the same time, Xaro and Pyat Pree are revealing to Dany and the 13 that they did this themselves. And then Pyat Pree kills the 13. Now again in the book, the dragons weren't stolen, the Pureborn who rule Qarth are very much still alive, and Xaro's faction of the 13 are doing fine. Now next, Jaime is caught after his escape attempt. Now in the book, the murderer, the mummer, the thief, and the poisoner do try to break Jaime out. The attempt fails and the murderer, mummer, and thief are caught. The poisoner is still at large. Now here in the show, Jaime has killed Rickard Karstark's son, and Rickard wants revenge. Now in the book, Jaime does kill 2 of Rickard Karstark's sons, and Rickard Karstark does eventually want revenge on Jaime. However, there's a 6-month period of time in between the killing and the vowed revenge. And so Rickard's motives seem disingenuous. It seems as if the Karstarks were looking for a reason to abandon Robb. It may be that, like the Boltons and the Freys, they saw the Starks as a losing cause. Now next we are treated to this extra scene between Cersei and Tyrion, where Cersei is remarkably frank about the nature of Joffrey. There are a few clues in the book that show that Cersei knows that Joffrey is a monster, but she mainly says these comments to Sansa and Jaime. Tyrion and Cersei have a very antagonistical relationship, and this level of honesty between them is very rare. Now in our next scene, Catelyn and Brienne are fearing that Jaime will be killed by Rickard Karstark. If they lose Jaime, they lose their bargaining chip in getting back Sansa and Arya. However, in the book, Catelyn's thought process is a bit more mysterious. In the book, Catelyn goes to visit her father, Hoster Tully, who is practically comatose. While visiting Hoster, Catelyn suddenly loses hours. This is very similar to when Jon lost hours before the White Attack. When she comes to, she suddenly wants to visit Jaime. And so she gets Jaime drunk, and the two have a very, very honest conversation. Much of this conversation the show showed in a previous episode. Catelyn and Jaime's conversation is nothing less than revolutionary. We find out that Jaime's kingslaying was a much more complicated affair, and that neither Jaime nor Cersei were responsible for the attack on Bran. And although it's not apparent at the time, this conversation somehow convinces Catelyn that she can trust Jaime Lannister. However, the Catelyn story ends on this cliffhanger. She asks for a sword, and it seems as if she's going to kill Jaime. Readers have to wait until the next book to find out what happens. Watchers have to wait until the next episode. So in our final scene, Theon tells everyone that he's killed Bran and Rickon, when in fact he's killed 2 random Miller's boys. But as it turns out, they're not so random. In the book, Ramsay leads Theon to a mill Theon actually knows. By chance, or not chance, Theon was banging the miller's wife. And so there was a chance that the younger boy was Theon's. That's right, there's a chance that Ramsay convinced Theon to kill his own son. And if this were Theon's son, one has to ask how Ramsay came upon this information. And that's all for episode 2.7. See you in episode 2.8.